I believed that our presence in Afghanistan should be focused on the reason we went in the first place, to ensure Afghanistan would not be used as a base from which to attack our homeland again. We did that.
What if the Americans leave and the fighting goes back to what it used to be during the Civil War? Then we will prefer war, because at least we can earn a living.
The United States will begin our final withdrawal, begin it on May 1 of this year.
The Taliban have captured 18 provincial capitals in its violent push for power. With this, the Taliban now control more than two-thirds of the country.
It's almost like a family photo shots of the Taliban fighters sitting behind a very grand desk in the middle of the presidential palace.
Afghans are thronging to Kabul's airport, desperate to get on planes and leave the country. The military side is where the U.S. is staging an elaborate evacuation of American diplomats from the embassy.
They've got to fight for themselves, fight for their nation.
What is happening in Afghanistan at this perilous moment was widely predicted, but it is the speed of it causing so much surprise.
We're going to do everything that we can to provide safe evacuation for our Afghan allies, partners, and Afghans who might be targeted because of their association with the United States. Those who help us are not going to be left behind.
We don't know what we are doing and where are we going with this life.
در پاکستان زندگی بسیار دشوار است. فعلا است که مثلا نامعلوم.
خودتان میدانید که ما اگر به افغانستان برگردم طبعا با تهدید مرگ روبرو.
There is no Afghanistan for us anymore. There is no Afghanistan for me and for my family again, especially for my kids. America means a new life.
My name is Rafael Kabursky. I left a career in the US government to work in documentary filmmaking. One report I helped out with while working in the government details how bureaucratic dysfunction undermined US commitments to evacuate Afghan allies. As I read more about evacuation efforts, I decided I wanted to investigate this further. As of 2023, there are between 250 and 300,000 Afghan allies stuck waiting for the US to process their visas. Thousands of these allies left Afghanistan to find refuge in Pakistan. To better understand the impact of this crisis, we traveled to Islamabad, where we spoke with refugees who were affected by visa processing delays.
پیش از سقوط رژیم طالبان در دولت افسر پلیس بودم و با آمریکایی‌ها کار میکردیم در حساب سوپروایزر زون شرق بودم، آمر ترمیمات زون شرق.
همراه امریکا کار کردیم برای یوس آرمی کورپس سال 2009 تا سال 2013. من دوجا من حیث پروکیورمنت آفیسر همراه اینا کار میکردم.
I was working for 8 years with the US government under the contract of Air Force, and in that time I was fully involved with the strategic information support for the benefit of Americans. Since the handover, for 2 more months I was on duty, and the office being seized by the Taliban, so my hard disk being opened by Taliban. The time that I received alerts that they personally looking for you, there was no any other option that I leave Afghanistan.
Tens of thousands of Afghan refugees are thought to have crossed the border into Pakistan in the 4 weeks since the fall of Kabul.
Up there is a makeshift Taliban flag. Not, you notice, the Afghan national flag, even though this is the Afghanistan border. Just over there, two soldiers facing off. Behind them is a growing crowd of people desperate to get into Pakistan.
Once screened and cleared, we will welcome these Afghans who helped us in the war effort over the last 20 years to their new home in the United States of America, because that's who we are.
Among the pathways Afghan allies have to come to the U.S. is the Special Immigrant Visa, also known as SIV. The program has been used to process applicants who were employed by or on behalf of the U.S. government for a year or longer. SIV is currently the central avenue for Afghan allies to immigrate to the United States. In 2022, a U.S. government agency estimated that only 20% of SIV applicants were granted visas.
I haven't seen professional moves by the Americans. 26 months I'm waiting here. The US government confirmed that me and my family, we are under the tracking of intelligence service of Taliban. Some people requested me that we will evacuate your family, but they needed information support. And I told them, till I do not send my family to a safe zone, I'm not an intelligence member anymore. The people like me, not only financially, but they are psychologically damaged.
چند روز پیش من خبر شدم که ممکن از وزارت خارجه آمریکا بوده یکی از بخشای مربوطه‌شان با یکی از دوستای فیسبوک ما تماس گرفته شده که از یک کس در مورد ما پرسان میشه که صرف در فیسبوک ما فرند است. اونا نه در مورد وظیفه من میفهمیدن، نه در مورد بک‌گراند من میفهمیدن، نه صرف همسایه ما بود در یک جای. به خاطر از این اگر با سوپروایزر ما تماس میگرفتن یک چیز منطقی بود، ولی با یک دوست فیسبوک ممکن او یک کس باشه که در مورد من معلومات طبعا نداره. پس اینا چی را میخواین ثبوت کنن با این کار؟
پس کابل حرکت کردیم، با فامیل بودیم. بسیار میترسیدیم که تایپ نکنن. آمدیم که فامیل با کسی غرض نداشت، که فامیل کار نداشتن. ای فامیلی سیاست که می بود با کار نداشتن. و یک سختی آمدیم داخل پاکستان و تا فعلا در پاکستان هستیم. مشکلات اقتصادی زیاد داریم. مکتب اولادای مکتب نیست، پانتون نیست. دیگه از پاکستان دولتش کدام چیز ندادیم، ما مردمش با ما روی خوب کرده است. کدام کار که ویزه داشته باشی، نه کار باشی، کدام ویزه 3 اولاد خودم خلاص شد و دیگه ما هم یک ماه مونده است خلاص شد. کیس ما صاحبی است، با ایمیل هم که میتونم اول میگیریم از کیسم میگن منتظر باشید، پروسس است. من تا کسی که حقیقت کار کرده است مانده است، حقیقت همراهشان کار کرده است مثل ما مانده است. اینجا کار نیست، از گشنگی میمره، خب مجبور چه کنه دیگه بمره، یک راه مردن است خلاص.
سلام، به خبرهای این ساعت طلوع و شبکه جهانی طلوع نیوز خوش آمدید. امروز پنجشنبه 26 ماه عقرب سال
در بخش گویندگی یا نیوز پرزنتر من وظیفه انجام میدادم و در اواخر پس پیش از اینکه سقوط کنم حکومت ما باعث معاون سخنگو در وزارت صنعت تجارت اجرای وظیفه میکرد.
دیگر رسانه‌های صوتی و تصویری کار کردیم مدت 9 سال در بخش‌های مختلف. مثلا بعضی وقتها پرزنتر بودیم در بعضی رسانه، پرزنتر رادیو، بخش دوبله، پرزنتر تلویزیون. تا اینکه طالبان آمد. بعد از اینکه طالبان آمد هم کار میکردیم. وقتی که طالبان متوجه شد که مثلا ما بچه و دخترها در یک بخش هستیم، به می خاطر باز طالبان گفتن که امی بخش ما منحل شود، باید بچه و دخترها نباید یک جای کار بکنه زیر یک سقف. و مو خاطر باز مجبور شدم که مثلا نه کار اونجا پیدا می شد که کار بکنم، به خاطر مثلا دیگه نه که نه درس خوانده میتونستیم. به مو خاطر من مجبور شدم که پاکستان بیایم.
فعال حقوق زن بودم و فعال حقوق بشری بودم که من همچنان در کنار اونا خودم یک نقاش هستم. نقاشی سرگرمی است برای من و ما از طریق نقاشی نمایشگاه‌های مختلف برگزار کردیم که روی تساوی جنسیتی و محو خشونت به خانم‌ها بیشتر نمایشگاه به این عنوان نمایشگاه گرفته شده در اونجا. و در کنار از این در سال 2020 یک رستوران تأسیس کردم در شهر مزار شریف که تمام کارمندای از رستوران خانما بود و ما فعالیت میکردیم، اما مشتری عموم می آمدن و مشتری ما برای عموم باز بود رستوران. و بیشتر از این رستوران در کناری که یک رستوران بود ما یک فعالیتایی که بر خانما بود استفاده میکردیم، یعنی خانمای فعال با هم جمع شده برنامه میریختیم و اون برنامه ها رو تطبیق میکردیم. ولی اخطار تقریبا ما یک ماه یا 2 ماه پیش از سقوط مزار یک شخص مستقیما از اعضای طالبان بود که داخل رستوران شده بود در روز عید قربان. بعداً به من فقط در واتساپ پیام کردن، در تلگرام پیام کردن که من وقتی پیام رو دریافت کردم تقریبا زمانی بود که طالبان دخترای فعال دستگیر میکردن و در مزار در اون زمان تقریبا 4 دختر کشته بودن و می باعث شد که من پارسال در سال 2022 11 می پاکستان بیام.
We will work to relocate as many individuals in the so-called priority 1 status and the so-called priority 2 status. But I want to reiterate one very important point. It is very important that all of these individuals follow the precise instructions that will be provided to them, and in some cases have been provided to them by the embassy.
Another pathway for Afghan allies is the Priority 1, Priority 2 program, also known as P1P2. The program was set up shortly before the Taliban takeover. It was designed for women and other vulnerable groups who worked for the US government, a US-based NGO, or media organization. The P1P2 program has barely started processing cases.
We don't have a lot of transparency in the data of how many P1, P2 cases there are, where they are, what the status of these cases are, and really importantly, I think, the sex disaggregation of the data. We don't know how many women or men are part of this program. We need to understand, are Afghan women disproportionately being disadvantaged by some of these programs?
Devin Cohn has focused on P1P2 cases since 2021. She works with Refugees International to assist vulnerable women in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
The US gave a reason for the war continuing as long as it did because they were improving the rights of women. And then when we left, there were very few pathways for women to get to the US, and there still are very few pathways. For us to really protect Afghan women and girls, give them pathways to safety, we need to know what we're looking at and what the problem is and how many cases there are.
طيب 3 طفل هستم با شوهرم و 3 طفلم به پاکستان آمدم. تهدیدی که مرا متوجه ما بود، اونا را هم طفلای ما خورد هستن، متوجه اونا هم هست و ویزا دارم. اما شرایط فعلی که در پاکستان وجود داره، مهاجرین چند پیش ما آگاه بودین که مهاجرینی که حتی ویزا هم داشتن اونا را بازداشت میکردن و پلیس اونا را مورد آزار و اذیت قرار میداد. شرایط اقتصادی افغانا مواجه هستند و به این لحاظ نمیتونن که اطفال خود به مکاتب روان کنن.
نه خیر نه، ما با فامیل نامدیم، تنها آمدیم به خاطر که کیسم پروسس شوه و قانونی آمدیم. ویزا گرفتم با بسیار مشکلات، با دوستا مثلا زندگی بکنیم، تنهایی سخت از زیاد. کیس ما P2 است. دیگه تا حال کیسم پروسس نشده. تا جایی که به ما گفته شده بود که 12 الی 18 ما رو در بر میگیره، اما بسیاری همکارای ما که هستن هیچ کدام اقدام صورت نگرفته به این عرصه. از 18 زیاد شده.
ما از جامعه جهانی این تقاضا را داریم که جامعه جهانی افغانستان را تنها نگذارن، زنان افغانستان را تنها نگذارن.
These transit centers provide a safe place for the SIV applicants and other vulnerable Afghanis and their families to complete their paperwork while we conduct security screenings and background checks before they continue on to their final destination in the United States or in another country.
The immigration process for really anyone, it runs through multiple departments. State Department plays a role, Department of Homeland Security plays a role, but those departments don't communicate with each other. right? Everything is isolated to within that department. Everyone's control of just their piece. And the people don't have a way to understand what's going on, what might be holding them up. We're asking them to provide documentation on backgrounds that in some cases was years prior. Now we're asking them to provide all that information over again, even though some department somewhere in the US government system already has that.
Joseph Robert led evacuation efforts on the ground during the US withdrawal and helped Afghans find refuge abroad. He created the Black Feather Foundation to assist vulnerable Afghans with resettlement. Joseph's frustrations echoed the findings of multiple government reports. A State Department internal oversight report in 2020 revealed that the agency had not taken appropriate measures to speed up processing. It showed the department failed to adequately address understaffing. Furthermore, the FBI's Foreign Terrorist Tracking Service, which is responsible for P1, P2 vetting, is struggling with insufficient resources. This further compounds communication failures between U.S. agencies. Around the same time Joseph began his efforts, Sean Van Diver founded the Afghan EVAC Coalition to assist Afghan allies. Having previously worked on the Biden campaign, he used his close connections in the administration to make Afghan EVAC its #1 civil society partner.
Sean, thank you for bringing us together today, but especially for your extraordinary leadership of the Afghan EVAC Coalition. Our Afghan partners are deeply, deeply fortunate to have you in their corner.
The administration is doing extraordinary things to make this happen now. They keep spending cabinet-level official time on this. They keep welcoming me and my teams into the White House to talk about this. If you look at the numbers of SIVs since the Biden administration took hold, they've processed more than 100,000, and the trend is always like this.
Even before the U.S. withdrawal, there was a backlog. According to the most recent State Department report, about 154,000 principal applicants were still in the process pipeline. That number doesn't even include family members. And get this, only about 23,000 principal visas have been issued since 2009.
The U.S. government likes to pride themselves on evacuating, 120-some thousand over the course of the final 2 weeks of August, but they weren't the ones that were targeted. It was supposed to be your SIVs. It was supposed to be those in your P1, P2, but like 80 or 90% of SIV applicants got left behind.
We've seen people that think somehow magically the withdrawal was going to be anything other than a chaotic mess. Our position is that it didn't have to be as messy or chaotic, but it was always going to be messy and chaotic.
The intent was just to get out. There was no coordinated effort to do so in any type of controlled manner.
Now Biden is bringing into the United States tens of thousands of unvetted, unscreened Afghan nationals who never worked with the Americans before. A lot of those people that rushed the planes are not the people that worked with us. They're people that wanted to get out. You're going to see some bad things happen over the coming years. We don't want people coming from countries that want to destroy us, okay? You know, it's pretty simple.
I shudder to imagine what this would have looked like if Trump had won the election. There's no chance that the more than 100,000 Afghans that have made it here would be realizing their American dream.
The United States has very little leverage in Afghanistan anymore, but we do have the ability to help people outside of Afghanistan. To have 600,000 people since 2021 in Pakistan, undocumented, with no rights and running out of money, is not good for anyone in the region.
We cannot impose our will on another foreign government, right? If they are nervous about something, we have to work through it, and that takes time. We are very frustrated that it takes so long, but also that's, you know, there's only so much that the US government can control. Other countries exist.
Ukrainian refugees boarding buses in Mexico, hoping to join thousands of others allowed into the U.S. in recent weeks.
More than 2 million refugees have already made their way to Poland. That's where President Biden is expected to discuss the humanitarian crisis.
He will announce further American contributions to a coordinated humanitarian response
to ease the suffering of civilians inside Ukraine and to respond to the growing flow of refugees.
Under the program, the U.S. will take in up to 100,000 refugees who can stay up to 2 years.
When Ukraine kicked off, almost overnight, policies were made to allow asylum seekers to come to the United States and be processed. Why Afghanistan was treated so differently.
Both the U.S. and other countries have made exceptions and treated Ukrainians with the respect and dignity that they deserve and according to international law. We need to raise the level of our other policies for Afghans as well to have that same sense of urgency and welcoming and acceptance, and that's what we're trying to advocate for.
Our estimate is that they're going to be working this for probably 5 to 10 years. We have an obligation as leaders to ensure that we are approaching everything with a healthy dose of reality.
It's been 2 years since the last U.S. troops left Afghanistan and the Taliban took control.
Now, more than 1.7 million Afghans have been told to leave Pakistan by November the 1st. Pakistan's Interior Minister Sarfraz Bugti said illegal Afghans would be expelled and their businesses seized if they stayed beyond the deadline.
If they don't leave until November 1st, we will use all of that enforcement to deport them.
The psychological toll that the uncertainty has taken on these refugees has been immeasurable. On August 30th, 2023, one Afghan girl died by suicide after jumping from the 5th story of her apartment building. We conducted the majority of our interviews in that same building, where hundreds of Afghan allies and their families were living.
There was a deeper and broader level of responsibility for the U.S. to the country as a whole and the people as a whole, beyond just those that serve directly alongside U.S. forces. So to see a lack of care or sense of responsibility to the nation as a whole is disgusting.
The Biden administration, they take it on the chin every day. They take a lot of criticism all the time because they just quietly do the work. They don't want to do anything that would disrupt operations.
At the top, the U.S. government doesn't want to put a lot of attention on Afghanistan anymore. I mean, we left, we put a lot of resources into Afghanistan, and I think that overall, the U.S. government wants to leave Afghanistan in the past.
امریکا فقط ما فعلا در شرایطی هستیم که در کشور خود امنیت نداریم و همه چیز بالای ما بند شده. در غیر از او اگر افغانستان آرام می بود شاید هرگز قصد سفر یا ای که بخوایم سیتیزنشیپ یو اس بگیریم نداشتم. تنها چیزی که من یو اس کشور می بینم که اونجا یک کشور است که دموکراسی در اونجا وجود داره و من میتونم از فرصتایی که در امریکا وجود داره استفاده کنم برای که روی خودم کار بکنم. و من مطمئن هستم روز افغانستان دوباره جور خواهد شد و میتونم برگردم و از تمام داشت چیزایی که در اونجا یاد گرفتیم دوباره به مردم خودم استفاده بکنم.
There are clear moral implications of the U.S. failure to evacuate its allies. But this failure raises questions about the effectiveness of American foreign policy at large. The U.S. not evacuating these Afghans shows the pressing need for policy reform. Now, if the government wants to evacuate those who risk their lives for America's vision, it must change course. In the meantime, Afghan allies will continue to live in fear, uncertain of their future.